Broadwell Hill.
All right, well, welcome everybody. That's Broadwell Hill. It's one of the highest points in the county. It's protecting me from the north and the west. Part of sustainability is in living out here is I don't drive. I rejoice when we have the opportunity for at-distance collaboration, at-distance meetings and processes. So I could go through the whole rap about why I'm here and all the evolution of it. I do love storytelling. I've been here since 2000. I was a 40-year-old woman with not a lot of money, without a real robust support system, but my calling was to live out into the woods. This place has gradually come together. It's changing all the time. It's never going to be done. I never want it to be done because it's my creative project. Lots of different people from the community have contributed to the structure. We call this the mother house. So this is kind of geared for people living on the land and coming back together to one house. This was all wooded. There was a lot of decision making that went on when I chose the site, chose the materials. I lived in the cave. So there's been a real progression over this time. There's a rock shelter technically. Oh, wow. And it has a whole historical value. I have a forest stewardship management plan. You were asking me about agriculture. About the only agriculture we really have here is the forest. So I do a lot of outreach and things about forest farming. Some of the stuff we use. So you see two propane tanks. I got the 500-gallon tank, and of course you pay attention to fire safety and all of that. Probably in 2002 or 3. I'm trying to drain this one out, and then we're going to get it out of here and hook up the other one, and that's from BFS Petroleum. They used to be Shady Creek, now they call it Augustine maybe, 550. Really great young guys, family, very community minded. So I prefer to go with a local propane company. That one is very large and very regional. And there, we don't use a whole lot of propane obviously, but we do it. It's a fossil fuel. We realize that it produces more greenhouse gases, but I really appreciate having it for the backup. Or should we cruise? Constantine, we're going to cruise the loop, and we're going to meet you down in the solar electric system area. Okay. So he's going to speak on our solar system this time. Meet you there in a few minutes.
Right.
Okay. One of the things with sanitation, we do have food grade 50-gallon barrels there if anybody wants to do water catchment. We practice human ore composting here. We also compost food scraps from Jackie O's, Stuart McDonald's. Thanks to Silverbridge Coffee, we also work with them with our coffee business, so I get lots of nice bags. So the thermophilic compost means I'm trying to compost in a particular way to get up to a certain temperature so that I feel assured that one step of pathogen reduction is taken care of. So pathogens are like E. coli, things that can make us sick. No matter how organic we might live, we can still come down with E. coli, and I don't want to do that or expose anyone else. So the thermophilic bins are back there. From that, it gets moved up here and it goes into a curing mode. And it's heavily stocked with Acinia foetida earthworms, and they are also shown to reduce pathogens. So everything here is taking into account the potential we can have on our environment, and in terms of public health, we want to make sure we're doing things well. Someone was speaking about trailer people, because I think I'm a trailer person myself, but some people, and even the hippies that go out and dig a hole, they don't really understand the consequences of pathogen reduction. So part of what I do is to try to help ramp that up in case we no longer have sewage systems and we're walking down many flights of stairs like they did with Hurricane Sandy with bags of feces and urine, which absolutely grossed me out. If I were to move back into town, I would probably do this. The idea of flushing my valuable resources down into fresh, potable water absolutely blows me away. We don't have to do that. So you get to experience that here today. We do our business in the 5-gallon bucket. Everything's upcycled, recycled, whatever comes this way. You have to take the lid off the bucket. Some people kind of miss that step. So I appreciate it. And then I'll take care of it, and we'll take it over to the thermophilic, and I'll show you that part. This is a mini cabin going up. 10 by 20 design with a greenhouse off the front and a deck off the back. And then there's a water catchment, they call it a water buffalo, sitting there that'll get hooked up to. And then there's a mulch basin system with wood chips that I've inoculated with Stropharia mushroom to reduce the pathogen load. besides producing edible mushrooms. We need to be prepared and we need to know our processes to be able to handle that. So I don't really want to put dog poo in, plus my dogs take care of it themselves, which, by the way, if you feel like communing with nature and peeing in the woods, you're very, very welcome to. Just don't pee in the watershed to the water, right? So this is the thermophilic. I shoot to get this up to 115, 120 for a couple days. It's not like a big compost operation like the compost exchange. I'm happy if this gets up to 115 to 120 for 2 or 3 days. And then it drops down. So you can see it's dropping now. I think we're at 102, maybe 104. And that's when I know to feed the microorganisms again. So I'm collecting my nitrogen, food scraps, I'm collecting my carbon and human manure, and I collect my comfrey and it's my gourmet cooking. So I have stashes of stuff in different places. A friend brought over some manure from their barns. So I cook, and I get what I want. You can see the wood chips here. It's all landscaped in such a fashion with French drains that should there be any effluent or runoff from the bin itself, which there rarely is, but the food scraps have so much moisture that sometimes on top of clay is hard. So this is basically another sanitation system. You can see the bamboo pipes. So if there's any effluent, it gets into the wood chip bed, and then it drains that way, and then I have the brush pile. So every step is filtration along the way. Mother Earth can do this very, very well. And then these beds are inoculated with the King Stropharia mushrooms as well.
How does it work in the winter?
In what way?
Well, can you get to the temperatures you want?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And it depends on what you're putting into it. You know, so maybe 1 week I do it and I don't quite get things just right and it doesn't heat up as far. But after I get my temperatures that I ideally want, it gets full. I'll do another bin over here, draining in the same system. Human pathogens don't like to exist out of the human body. So I let it sit for 6 months and then I move it. Sometimes it'll heat up again. These are particular kinds of earthworms. They're not like our native ones around here. And they prefer 50s cold, 85 they get really stressed. But they're really smart. They use calculus to determine where their food sources are and to get away from the heat. So I always do a buffer of the shredded paper, hay, whatever I get. The shredded paper comes from town. A lot of people are shredding these, I thought it was cellophane windowed envelopes, but it's really something called plasticine, and then they shred it. And I appreciate the paper, I use it for a lot of different things, but I have these little plastic strips. Eventually they break down. But
Is it aerobic? Does it require turning or anything, air in there?
I have a pipe, like I said, the whole basin, and then I have a aeration pipe down here.
Okay.
For air getting down in about the middle. And they're also sitting up on pallets to allow the air to get underneath.
Okay,
so it's definitely aerobic, but the earthworms aerate. So they help me out with that too. But with human manure composting, and Joe Jenkins wrote a great book called The Human Manure Handbook. There's a lot of material on the web, a lot of research studies about these kinds of things too. So you have temperature, but you also have time. So what if I can't get my temperatures up consistently for a period of time? I'm backing it up with 6 months of cure and rest. I've been doing this stuff since the 70s. There was a period of time where, you know, oh, you got to turn your compost. Well, I'm getting a little too old for that. Plus, with human manure, you really don't want to be handling it. I have designated tools and things. You're a nurse, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So infection control practices.
Yeah, good.
So I pay attention to dirty, clean. This is my washing station over here. Clean food buckets get washed first, human manure gets last, they get sanitized in the sun. So let's move.
So how long is this pile work? 6 months?
When I close it, I'll put a sign up. Aeration can be a problem, especially with all the food scraps. Using wood chips instead of sawdust helps a lot too.
Right, but basically it's a bulk system. You build the pile, you leave it for 6 months or so.
Yep, and then it goes up to the curing bin up there.
And then you start a whole new...
Here.
And in the meantime, you're accumulating everything in buckets.
A few things there. When this is all full, I'll
You aren't
start
keeping adding fresh stuff to it.
No, I do.
You
So
do
when
add
the
fresh-
temperature drops, see, so this is just about 1 week. I was going to pressure myself to get all my compost done and get my buckets washed before you guys came. Oh, well, that's not silly. We're going to have a lot of food. We might have some poop. So I wait. So the temperature's falling now. So then I'll feed it. It'll get hot again. And when it's totally full, because it's shrinking all the time, so it takes me a while to fill it. So when it's totally full and it's not going to shrink down anymore, then I close it. Then I start a new one. Right where my buckets and my pipe are, that's all designed to drain into that one. So we'll go there then. So we can have a composting, human manure composting, worm farming workshop sometime.
Yeah, I know.
But I think we better move.
Better move.
But that's with the boxes. Here's where, usually I have these down, but I decided to lift them up, see what was under them and mow. So I keep everything up on pallets.
Coffee grounds.
So we've got trails all through the upper but a health department approved sanitation system here. I will probably put a flush toilet in at some point because I'm getting older and guess it's nice. I'd like to do like a bed and breakfast and be able to help address our economic needs and create some jobs out here. And a lot of people, you know, it's nice to be introduced to human or composting, but a lot of people kind of like to have the option of a flush toilet. So it's kind of like a typical septic tank system. Here's the septic tank. It goes over a baffle into another container. That has a filter in it that I have to take out, you know, once, twice a year. Living this way means I'm responsible for management. It then goes into this tank, which holds 150 gallons. It's called a dosing tank. When it hits 150 gallons, it heads down here. Do you see the black cap and the white vents? That's called a distribution box. So all 150 gallons hits this distribution box and goes out like a spider into a very sophisticated biologically active sand filter. From there it drains down. There's another pipe down there. So the pipe releases, then it goes into a wetlands area, then it goes into another King Stropharia bed, then it goes into a vernal pool. So it's getting crossed, and a vernal pool is a pool, a biologically active pool of water. I know where everything comes from the house. I know the garden drains to the pond. I cannot put a truck full of horse manure on my garden because what's going to happen? Nitrogen's going to flow down, hit my pond. So being aware of your watershed, where's your water come from, where's it going, is a really good thing. Erica Gallatin from the United Plant Savers, which is one of the organizations I'm a member of, posted a nice thing on Facebook today on eco-Buddhism. And it had a really nice kind of 8-step system. And I'm into systems. I'm into management tools, decision-making tools. I have been blessed, and I've tried to utilize the resources that come my way with no debt. The land's paid off. I'm slow growth. We do these things with community networking. No industry, no jobs, very little income in this area. It's an economically impoverished area. How do us trailer people make it? We collaborate. So there's been a lot of people, including you guys now, who have contributed to this. So it's due with what we got. I was raised during the 70s, the Jimmy Carter era, drawing house designs, thinking about just simple, common sense stuff. You know, have your windows on the south side. So when I hit 40, and being a hospice nurse too, it's like, well, it doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter if you don't have skills, you don't have money. If I don't do it, when am I going to do it? So be tolerant of me. It's funky, it's not finished. And I am so thankful to have a roof over my head, to have water, to have electricity, to have healthy soil, more and more, to have the forest. So I would like to take a moment that perhaps we can all just join me in celebration, because part of my thing coming here was the woods wanted me to come, and they wanted me to bring people. And they need to know that there's relationships. So if we could just take a quick moment for a sense of sacred gratitude for having air, for having water, But if you will notice, there's the hill. I selected a site where I'm maximum solar gain. It's like a bowl here. The pond also helps me with my solar electric, which are the 2 arrays on the left. It's a relatively small system, 2 kilowatt. This went in 2005. I was able to help catalyze the health department system in 2004. The pond I don't have to keep mowing. Plus in the wintertime, the reflection of the sun hits the water or the ice and bounces up. I like to tilt my panels. You get more efficiency off your panels if you have airflow underneath them. It's a tradition. It's a ritual when we tilt the panels. It helps me stay connected with the tilt of the earth. It's a constant relationship happening. So we won't tilt those probably till August. When we hit midwinter then, the sun is just above the treetops. So the house is designed for passive solar heat. I currently have the curtains, the drapes drawn, and we'll open those up and open up the windows now because we're through the hot heat of the day. So that's something that anybody can do no matter where you live. These are the solar thermal panels on the right here. That's for the hot water. And you can see if you look, the lower right corner is where a glycol, they call it kind of food safe. It's not terribly toxic if it leaks in my pond. So it comes in the lower right, goes across the bottom, rises up through those tubes, and out the top left. Goes back to the house, and I'll show you the heat exchanger and the system there that actually produces the hot water. Okay?
Do you have grass carp in here or something?
I have one grass carp.
One grass carp? It keeps it pretty clean as far as weeds?
I don't have much of a problem with that. He's really big. These are my old buddies in here. It's got catfish and bass in it as well. The pond management activities here are pretty attentive. I love living on the pond.
With a pond in the house here?
Oh no, this was all total woods. So I took about a year to live in the cave and to get to know the woods and to decide where I was going to develop. And of course when you go into the nature has its own system going on, and you're talking about bulldozing, those are big decisions. I don't take that lightly. I practice holistic management, and especially with environmental decisions like this, what are the unintended consequences, especially since humans are just known to be wrong. I better be really careful.
So is this your source of water for the place?
No. I have a health department potable water system. The rainwater is all collected. The metal roof I love. The attention to our guttering system. We still have one more to do. We have some other work. So all our rainwater comes off the roof.
Yeah.
That goes through a roof washer, which I'll show you, into a cistern, and then we have a whole system of filtration and things that go back in the house. I have a mushroom farm down here. You can see the logs and the totems. And I irrigate the garden. So having a mushroom farm is very important to have water available. So I can take it from the pond, do the mushrooms, do my compost, do my buckets, irrigate if I need to. And if things get really bad, I can use the pond for put it in my cistern. I've never in all my years here ever ordered water. But there's consequences putting pond water in your potable cistern water. So kind of set you back a few steps, you know. It's biologically active. I can put another filter on there. I would take measures to reduce the contaminants every step of the way, but then afterwards I would probably have to sanitize. Do you see the crate and the danger sign? That might mean something. So this is a yellow jacket nest. We just walked by. They're cool. This was thickly wooded area. A lot of the wood that we harvested turned into my brush pile, which is habitat, but also a lot of the wood was milled for the house. And you can see the gradations here. When I talk about round edges, there's more diversity on the edge. So whether we're looking at the environmental aspects or the social aspects or the economic, diversity is really good. So the more we learn how to work together, the more we bring different voices together, the healthier we will be. And the same with the forest. So a large part of my forest stewardship is increasing wildlife habitat. pushing trees back, pushing succession. It's an art and a science and a spiritual practice.
Sweat lodge.
We have arrived down by the batteries. That's a bald-faced hornet nest.
Oh,
You don't want to go in there.
no.
We've taken them down earlier on previous years, and this year we decided to just let it do its thing. It's just amazing. And they're not terribly aggressive.
So you can rotate your solar panels without interfering.
We're not sure. I have my bee suit.
Uh-huh.
It's really pretty smooth. You unloosen a couple nuts, and it tilts pretty smoothly, but still,
You don't want to
you don't want to unloosen bolts and then have to run and hit the pond or something.
Right.
We've been taking them out when they were smaller, but it's like, well, they're part of the system. But it's like having a yellow jacket nest in your house. Some things aren't acceptable, but it is a
Right.
beautiful piece of
you
engineering.
have to weigh the risks and the benefits.
The workers that are actually building the paper nest outward, they were moving very slowly. They didn't even seem perturbed at all. From what I understand from two of our local professional installers, batteries in solar systems are rare of most solar installations. Most of them these days are grid tied with no batteries. Part of our specialty is battery maintenance. We have workshops on it. I've spent a lot of time learning what can help good batteries last longer. Cheap batteries, it's a toss-up the amount of time it's worth putting into having them last longer. I've had a lot of experience with lower end golf cart batteries, which are kind of a starting point. These are, while massive, a lot of that massivity is just lead thickness, not a lot higher amp hours. These, for instance, are a 546 amp hour set at 48 volts. If you look in the back of this golf cart under the seat, it's a 48 system at 225 amp hours. And you can see a size difference. Two 48 volt sets of batteries, not a whole lot bigger, it's just a lot more lead, which hopefully translates into a lot more years of service if maintained well.
How old are these batteries?
2004,
Wow.
11 years, and hopefully not even halfway through their service life yet. We had one bad battery relatively early on. Surrett replaced it without question. It's actually number 6, starting at this side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4 and 5 are off for temperature probe service. One of the temperature probes that was in it was faulty. The temperature probes are very important to tie the charging of both the solar panels and the generator. Temperature probes signaling their charging controls, and one of them was faulty, indicating a lot lower temperature of the batteries and therefore calling for what would amount to an overcharging situation. So those two tops were popped up during this servicing. Can anyone see what that temperature dialed in number 1234 is reading right now?
It's about 105.
105. So they're down 5 degrees from 110. These were in an equalized charging condition today, which is a controlled overcharging. One of your biggest limiting factors in equalizing batteries is temperature. But when the temperature gets too high, you have to shut it off, or you'll burn your batteries up. They do not like at all being over 110 degrees. You start shorting battery life. Kathy explained the panels, at least to the extent of their capability, at 1 kilowatt each. So the total combined at 48 volts is 2 kilowatts coming from these arrays. There's separate breakers inside that control box for each separate panel.
Who installed it?
Kathy and I did a lot of it, but for the grant, she had to have a certified installer to get the money. Kathy was quite capable of doing the entire installation herself. She designed the entire package.
What Where did you get the panels, the posts?
To point the money at least at one stage of it locally, she chose to use the local installer, actually let them buy the mechanical stuff that you see, and it was Dovetail. The monies now are almost, from what I understand, 100% have to be grid tied.
Maintenance, you have to check the level of water or acid.
The electrolyte that's in there is certainly checked and noted. You're noting the water boil off over time. Is it higher now? Is it about average? Is it lower now? Lower isn't always a good thing. It might indicate you'd be looking at, well, is the equalization more corrective than just maintenance? And if it is, that lower water loss might also be that the settings are too low. The actual equalizations are 2 to 4 times a year.
And it's insulated because there's a minimum temperature and eventually you're worried about it.
The warmer I can keep them in the winter, the better they're going to perform. So early in the summer,
What's your target?
as warm as I can keep them. They're outside, it's not a heated box. There's anything I can do to keep the heat that's generated from the charger. The colder they are, they just have less ability to release the stored voltage that they have. These hydrometers that are on this table are different ranges. This one is an old winemaking hydrometer that I have, but it actually goes down to 1.0 up to 1.3. This one goes from 1150 to 1250, and this one 1200 to 1300. Those numbers are based on a relative of water. Water being 1.000 specific gravity. The electrolyte that's in the batteries, of a fully charged battery, is 1.265. So you use a hydrometer to give you really accurate readings of what the specific gravity is in the battery to help tell the condition of it. Voltages are a really indirect way and really have a lot of severe limitations of what they can tell you inside, what's going on inside the battery.
Why do they make you tie into the grid now? What is the purpose of that?
My belief is that it is part of, to what extent it's tied into Homeland Security, I don't know, but anybody that's generating electricity is a national asset. And the more of them that you can tie into the grid, you've got micro power generating stations to supplement the mega power generating stations. You have enough of those, then you can start minimizing the mega ones. But certainly, as they have not yet figured out power shortages, it's an immediate assistance to try to help with that. Because the highest consumption of electricity is going to tend to be in the summer. All the air conditioners are on. Possibly it's sunny. And all those people that have home electric generating stations can potentially also be adding to the grid.
Well, there used to be state of Ohio grants, and there now are not any. So you obviously put this system some years ago.
Well, even when they're state, sometimes that money
Well, there was a
distributed
Clean
by the
Ohio fund.
state.
There was a charge in the electric bills.
Oh, I don't know if that's
But
what
I don't think
this one was.
anybody know. There's no such thing as a state grant for solar. I did not believe there is.
I wouldn't doubt right now with Cage's just
Yeah.
putting the brakes on it that it's
Since the politics in Columbus is certainly
somewhat
against it.
backed off, but I don't know.
Is this a propane generator? I mean,
No,
does it run on
this is
propane?
What is this?
It's a gasoline generator.
Could it run on propane? I
No,
suppose.
not this one.
This is for
Possibly with a carburetor change it could, but because this is so far into its service life,
Nope.
the hope is to replace it with a much quieter, more efficient propane generator.
So how do you use it?
It was running today to help try to get these batteries equalized. The last 30 days was a lot of consistently semi-hard usage, not a lot of sun. We all know, whether we're farmers or not, there was a ton of rain. That rain was accompanied by not much sun, so the batteries were getting very inadequately charged. That, over 30 days, starts building up a coating on the surfaces of the plates inside the batteries. And when that sulfation starts to happen, they do not take a charge. Then you have to go into aggressive corrective equalization to smack that sulfation
that's
off
when
the
you
plates.
have
These panels are not enough amperage to get an equalization with this size batteries. It was partly Surrett not knowing this technology enough, even though they were selling it, to be able to recommend to Kathy to equalize those. She should have had 3 sets of panels, not 2. Had they been another technology that was thinner lead plates, the 2 panels would have done it. These need 10 to 20% more than normal of input capacity, and these 2 can't do it. It's supplemented with the generator.
Have you considered like gel batteries or low maintenance batteries? I mean,
Don't like them myself,
you
but
don't like, how come?
they have their own challenges. For somebody that isn't going to maintain their batteries and isn't going to put the time to it, they're my first recommendation. For somebody that's got the time to devote to the love-hate affection that it takes to keep these where they need to be, I'd say lead acid. Dollar for dollar, there is no cheaper per amp hour. Gel cells have their benefits, they've got their disadvantages. They have their own unique maintenance nuances that are different from lead acid, demanding a charge controller that can meet those charging criteria. Not all can. I saw somebody on a Facebook post that was trying to get advice on recharging a quote-unquote deep cycle marine battery. Well, even a gel cell is a lead acid of the sorts, but with different charging characteristics. Most of the recommendations were get a battery charger, shop charger, get a motorcycle trickle charger. Well, depends on how much she wants to maximize the investment value that she spent on those things. The nice thing about this golf cart, it is a 48. It was specifically chosen over a 36 volt so that it could be plugged into the house. This battery bank can be disconnected for service. The house stays up using that charge cord plugged into that golf cart, feeds the house. It has its amperage limitations because it's such a small cord, but it can run almost everything in the house except for the water pumps. Too much current, that'll shut them off. It allows the service to stay up while these are taken out of the system and whatever, batteries pulled out, which happened once or twice. This device is normal charging, which is 110 input, and it puts 48 out. This thing doesn't have an equalized charging. Same thing with some residential solar systems. You've got ones that are really basic charging only. You've got other ones that can bulk charge, absorb charge, as well as equalize charging. This thing can't. So for maximum life out of these batteries, I can actually use the charge controlling of the house's system to do a controlled equalization of those batteries. I've got to lower the settings from these Surretts, but I can still use this electric system in the house to do a good maintenance or correction equalization of that battery set there.
Lid off the bucket and you put it there. You do your business, you contribute, you donate your resources to our efforts to build soil here. And then you cover your business with some wood chips and you put the lid back on and you wash your hands. I was living in the cave, then I lived in the teepee, then I had the school bus, then I had a semi-trailer, and I actually built the house around the semi-trailer. And when this went up, then this was my little pseudo cave, and I lived here while the rest went up. I scored cheap trusses, windows, which there's drawbacks to getting cheap construction excess windows. But, you know, it's worked for me, and like I said, I'm so thankful. In the wintertime, I got old comforters pretty cheaply, opened up one of the hems, and those serve for my thermal curtains. It's not an issue right now because we're not getting hit with the sun, but in the wintertime, the sun, and with climate change, we don't know, I mean, even the calculations for passive solar are kind of variable, so you have to be adaptable. In the wintertime, on the solstice, it goes all the way back to the back wall. So it's a thick concrete slab, it's insulated, it's like a solar slab. The concrete blocks serve as thermal mass, so the sun comes back, heats, gradually releases. I've never had this space drop below freezing. Generally, we ride about 55. But at night then, I have to close the windows. So I use those comforters.
Do you have gravel underneath this?
There's sand and there's gravel. It's like a basic concrete slab, only it's
Okay,
got the vapor.
but not as thermal collectors?
Not so much, mostly just for the stabilization of the concrete. So it's pretty thick. I think it's a 6 to 7, 8-inch slab. I had a lot of different help along the way and didn't have a lot of money. So I've had different carpenters with different levels of skill, all contributing to the creative stuff. Sometimes I shake my head, but sometimes, but it works. The core part of the structure was constructed by, they call themselves the Royal Barn Builders. They do a lot of barn restoration. He's also my neighbor in Kilvert. He's the Kilvert Community Church preacher. And he works to try to keep local people employed, which is why we get kind of a motley crew of craftsmanship going on. But they made sure I had the structure up. It doesn't blow, it doesn't shift in the wind, I haven't had much It's stable, it's good. So the aesthetic stuff I think will come, no more of the finishing work and all, but we make priorities, we always do, and I'm just thankful to have a good solid structure, and I give thanks. And keep in mind that the main core of the place was with the concrete block. This was all dirt up to this level, so I was doing a clay floor, and the semi-trailer was back there. So I pretty much dug this out by hand. So it's really been a fun, creative project. We took the semi-trailer out when I closed in my upper ceiling. There's probably a good 12, 16 inches of gravel there. That's for the root cellar. So it'll get vented, it'll get sealed up, it's my refrigeration. But right now it works really, really well for storing squash. I keep temperatures and humidity, so if something's not broken, it doesn't go on my priority list, so it's working pretty well. So he was talking about solar thermal. He was talking about this gadget to charge the system. It's a food grade type of glycol, so I don't have to worry about it freezing. I come from the era where we just did simple bread box solar water heaters. You cut open an old water tank, you put a window on top of it, take the insulation out, and there's great simple ways to produce hot water, including running the hose on your yard. So with this glycol system, I don't have to worry about the freezing. And it comes in one side, and it goes through this heat exchanger. The hot glycol goes in around a separate water line, copper, and the heat passively transfers to the water. The glycol continues its way out to complete the loop. It's active solar because it has a pump and a pressure tank and meters. And everything, of course, is running off our solar electric system. And this is a glorified solar hot water tank, supposedly. It's 119 gallons, and it's not insulated well enough. Ideally, I want it to go to my wood stove and then up to the upper level for a on-demand type water heater. Right now, we use a backup system to this old hot water tank we scavenged out of the dump. We get solar electricity all the time here, no problem, really. We have to be really careful when we run into those 5 days, 7 days of no sun. The main challenge we have is just maintaining that huge bank of batteries, because it was a test kind of set of batteries. They increased the positive plates for renewable energy, and it turned out it has a greater resistance to charge. So I sized all the system, but I didn't take into account this particular bank of batteries. It needs a lot of juice to charge them properly. Solar thermal was kind of an afterthought, but it was a part of the developmental grant, and I thought, well, if I don't do it now, when am I going to be able to do it again? But I'm not sure I'd recommend to people in this area to go solar hot water. But, if there's no sun, there's no hot water. Whereas if it's cloudy in the wintertime, even with the ice, we're still producing electricity. But it's very, very nice. Going from the cave, going from these primitive living conditions, to me this is like woohoo civilization. I have a pump, water, hot water, and I'm not using any fossil fuels most of the time. This is that charge pressurized system he created, which is very cool. He does some really cool things. The glycol goes in there, gets it hot. We use that for the backup. This is the pressure tank for the water. So we talked about the water coming off the roof. I'll show you my roof washer out there. I have an 1,800-gallon concrete cistern buried out there. So it goes into that. I have a submersible pump that runs off the solar electric that brings the water in here. This is a pressure tank, so my lines are pressurized. Then it goes through here with one filter, and that's a UV light. So the UV light, as long as you filter your water well, will disinfect it. So it's a potable water system. Mike from the health department's been out and tested it. But you just have to make sure there's not a lot of sediment and stuff in the water because bacteria can hang out behind the particles.
Does it go through the filter first?
Filter first.
And then the UV?
Yep. You got to filter it as much as you can before it hits the UV. It gets coated with pollen. So I just have to be more on top of the maintenance. I need to add like a bypass valve to the gutter so when my roof is covered with pollen, I can pre-wash that off. But in the wintertime, if I'm concerned about freezing, I open that up and I never have to worry about the whole thing freezing. Oh, we scavenge some type of old hot water sand filters. Just use lots of different things, maybe like, where is he? There you are, Dennis. You know how you can do a lot of different filtration, pre-filters. A neighbor of mine here, Dixie, she created her own pre-filter system. And so there's lots of different ones out. I felt better about helping a smaller business and somebody who's creating a good product. I should have painted it. I keep a carpet over it because of course sunshine breaks down this fiberglass. It increases the mold. Things don't like to grow as much in the dirt.
It looks very clean.
I just take it all apart and I set the filter there and I just spray it off with my hose. Every once in a while I might do a little mild bleach solution on it. So it comes apart. I took the screws out. So this is the box. See, it's got drip holes. So the water rushes in. If it gets really full, it rushes through there, and then it also drips out the bottom. And I can just clean this out. Sometimes I scrub it. Sometimes I just rinse it. We have maintenance protocols, a system. I'm getting older. I'm looking for someone who's interested in becoming my caretaker, as well as do the forest stewardship. So we have systems and management protocols, notebooks, boxes. So this comes out. Nifty little thing. This comes out,
Okay.
and I just throw it down there. You can see it's got some age. Maybe one drawback is if I go to replace it, if I don't make one myself, and I could. I think they're running about $60.
By what?
The filter. You can buy filters like this already made.
You mean the
This is the original one. You can buy this whole shebang.
You can buy them at Economy Supply.
I think so. Last time I checked, I don't know if they were ordering them in. You can also get them from the Marietta water filtration too. But it's just like hardware cloth and the poly filter.
Julian Fabrics, get quick
Yeah.
batting.
And then it's got a little tray it sits on, and if you want to see it, the water rises so high, and then it flows into the tank. So we're sitting on top of this huge rock outcropping in a sense. It's a ridge that runs north-south. And then right over here is a perched water table, which is like a bubble on top of that rock. So I've landscaped and done different things to direct the water, hold the water, get the water to recharge the groundwater. And it seeps out. So the pond is full of that seep. I had to do some extensive, and I'm still working on my drainage around the house. I never had water flowing down the hill, but we're just sitting on top of this bubble.
I mean, we're on top of a ridge. You don't have a big drainage area, and yet there's a pond full of water. I know it's a perched water table and all, but how did you know it would fill a pond?
Well, you don't want a huge watershed anyways, and you don't want a big ravine, because then if we get these gully washers, that's going to wash out your
If you're on a
dam.
ridge top, how do you know you're going to get water, if you can get water like that?
Part of it is knowing the makeup of the land,
Birdhouse.
looking at the soils maps. There's maps of water tables.
Do you have some expert?
clay.
You figure it out yourself.
I am an autodidact. I am passionate about learning. I get a little obsessive about it, so I learn everything. But I cover my bases. So I'm out here, I'm looking, I'm living in the cave, and I'm looking, look at this. I got the orientation I want. I got the watershed flowing through here. Can I do it? I wanted to put it a little further down, personally, because if you're up high, you get hit with more winds. So I've got the hill protecting me. First, when we took all the pines that were dying down, now I'm open there, so I get more wind. So I got this solar bowl going on. It's really better to be a little further down from the ridgetop, midway. Cold air settles in the valleys, right? Ridgetops gets the wind and the cold weather. So I wanted it midway. I did a test pit. Jeff De Lavelle, come out. And we did a test pit down there. I was confident about my watershed. Ora Anderson, he was my very good friend and mentor. My approach is I consult with everybody I can think about. So Ora and I walked it too. So the dozer came in. We did a pit. It's about 5 foot deep. It's now serving in line with my sanitation
They dug
filterings.
a 5-foot trench.
50 to 75 feet from the rock cliff wall, waterfall. We said we can put a dam here and catch this drainage area. It's probably about 6 feet wide, 8 feet wide, and it's just dug down where we wanted to put the dam. And it's only about 10 or 12 feet long. The reason my dam's not there is because we hit bedrock at about 5 feet deep. There's an issue with these injection wells. And our rock is impervious. Now they can tell me how they do their injection wells and where they go. And I'm sorry, when we hit the bedrock, it took about 3 days. It filled with water, groundwater. We knew we couldn't put a dam there because if it fills with water through the cracks in the rock, it's gonna leak. I don't want a leaky
Oh, it was
pump.
filling from underneath.
Yes, and the drainage area. So that's where I said, well, let's come up here. We didn't run into rock. I found maybe when we dug it out and excavated it, maybe about 8 max little rock, sandstone rocks. Other than that, it was about 3 or 4 different colors of just absolutely gorgeous clay.
Clay, into gray.
Yep, red clay, white, purple.
Yep.
And we collected it and harvested it. My son was a potter, so wonderful clay. I also had soil and water come out because I like to cover my bases. He had his probe. He chose one spot over there, put it in, and just happened to hit a rock, so you can never put a pond here. And then I met Merrill Langle. Merrill's now deceased. He is known as the farm pond dude in southeast Ohio. He was 76 when he did this pond. And he had a beautiful 10-foot dozer. I grew up in a construction family. My dad was an artisan, so I have a great appreciation for the artistry of this big equipment. And it was such a pleasure to work with Merle. So how did I do it? Teamwork, collaboration. Definitely I would do a test pit.
But you didn't do another test trench up here.
Well, we did. And we could get down deep enough that it was all clay. We didn't hit rock. Now when I dug my cistern in here, so we're sitting on bedrock. And I wasn't about to go dynamite, make sure it was really level and put a good layer of sand and things down, and then we dropped the cistern in. I can't drive over it. I'm still doing a lot of construction here. There's another drain that's going in down here. I'm digging out underneath there, and I'm very protective over my concrete tanks that are in the ground.
How deep is the pond?
It started out 14, 16, and now we think we're estimating it's about 10 to 11 in the middle. So you can dive off the end, but in the middle, it was 14 to 16 feet deep. A little meditation rock circle. It was like a great big Arecibo. It was really cool. So we let it fill by itself also. So I do architecture with the water flows to get it into my garden and to kind of control where it goes. Right here where you see the ferns and things, it comes out, see the little rocks. So I get a little pool there. I create like toad habitat and frog habitat. And this is milkweed, and it spreads.
You seeing monarchs?
One monarch today. And so you better conserve that water, and you better keep an eye on that bucket, or all that water is going to be all over your floor. And my son does really sophisticated types of gray water systems in California. And they're great and they're cool, but it's still a plumbing system, and you don't get to connect with the weight of the bucket or who gets the gray water now, who needs a leach field. Yeah. And it's a sophisticated, biologically active sand filter, so it's a little different than just a tank and a leach field. The distribution box is a prototype as well, hit it all at once. So understanding how our microbes filter things, how these things work in nature.
But it costs $10,000 for
Yeah,
this?
$9,000.
So what? So you're not allowed to do composting toilet without
having a septic system?
It's an Ohio state law. We've only just recently recognized in Ohio that there's a difference between black water, sewage water, and gray water, kitchen water. So we've made progress acknowledging that gray water can be utilized differently. However, the idea of human manure composting, the health department, I would be surprised I lived long enough to have them authorize something like this. They have to go on the common denominator.
But there's a lot of people that do that.
Oh, absolutely.
Don't ask, don't tell.
And I've had our county planner and my sanitarian out here. I've showed them what I was doing from a nursing point of view, from a public health point of view. Isn't that what counts? Protecting our environment, learning these processes so we don't get into a situation like Haiti with cholera. And public health has to kind of accept the fact that most people don't want to accept personal responsibility, so they're going to go for the lowest denominator. So, obviously I'm pretty open about it. I don't want to get too open about it because if somebody, don't ask, don't tell, if somebody gets uncomfortable, then they could probably come out. But I'm in a different kind of situation and I'm very, very attentive to the best management practices.
But also, you
If I
have the
can,
septic system.
and that's because I worked there and I had to
Oh, you work where?
at the health department.
That could be a problem.
I had to get my permits. They needed the money. If my kids or whoever inherits this place, it's going to be a good thing to have a health department certified system. Cast iron bathtub someone gave me and we put a propane stove under it. Gotta be careful about your butt. So conservation. We have lots of electric gadgets. We actually used the vacuum, you know, we had some sunshine, so I got some of the dog hair up. A week or two in the wintertime without any sun, you think that vacuuming's going to be a priority? Ironing clothes.
Keeping warm.
And no more of those days of starched white nursing clothes.
Yeah,
Ain't gonna
thank
happen.
goodness.
This is all free stuff, junk, or very low cost. Someone had this countertop custom made and it wasn't the right length. One of these days we'll get cabinets. The garden hose is a weak link in my water. So the water goes up to a gravity feed tank. It's upstairs. This used to be all open. Now keep in mind, we used to be standing in a semi-trailer here. There's a 40-gallon water tank up top that I can draw from for extra water, just gravity fed. The problem with the garden hose is that it is porous. Bacteria or things could get into the little pockets. I can drink it. I'm used to it. We have a Brita water filter over there, and Constantine fills up water probably at AceNet or something, so when we have guests come, there's actually city water. Sometimes I open that up and the chlorine just knocks my socks off. But the Brita takes care of it. That's our water system right now. We wash the dishes in the basins. Because we're very acutely aware of water, just don't run the water. Shut the water off when you brush your teeth. And then we just have it plumbed to buckets. So we work with a lot of interns. You only have to let the water run and overfill the bucket once. Oh yeah. You got to be careful what you're putting into it, what kind of soap you use. But for the most part, I've never had anything die. I use a diversified system. If you have 1 square foot of land, you can only put so much into it and you're going to overload the system. And you're thinking about where is it draining to. I think it's a good educational tool. Refrigerator. That came out of a friend's barn. It's an old Swedish serval. It's just that little silver box in the corner. The other one is just an insulated box that's sitting on it. It runs on electric or propane. Runs on kerosene. We replaced the seals on it. There's a lot better technology now. So that's on my list. And then I have the root cellar where all the things like that squash. See that big old squash? Can you show folks that? That's from last year. We still had garlic. Now what is this one? That's a butternut. That's amazing.
You know,
Yeah, that came out of the garden last year. I use crates. I keep in mind ventilation, humidity. Oh, the wood stove. This is the warmest house I've ever lived in. So I need to build a solar dryer so I can do my ginseng. And this time of the year, it's pretty impossible to dry anything. Everything's moldy. I got the washing machine that came out of the dump. I had a broken spring. It's an energy efficient front load. Somebody tossed it and Sears didn't want to deal with it, so they put it back by the dumpster. Mr. Constantine, my Wonder Man, fixed it.